Okay, so we're going to do a tomato review on the chocolate stripes tomato. Now, this is one that I started from seed, and it is an heirloom variety. And we got a pretty good amount of tomatoes, but unfortunately, with all the rain we had, most of these tomatoes, some of my best tomatoes, got these deep fissure cracks in them, and it really just ruined the tomatoes. I mean, I can't really do much with this, and I could save the seed from it, but it's already starting to rot because the black mold is starting to get in there. But unfortunately, the rain just wiped out a lot of my tomatoes this year. So what could I say about this tomato variety? Number one, when they're in this green state, what I've noticed with them, they're very hard like an apple. Very, very hard. And they stay hard like that all the way up to the point where they start actually starting, get to a ripening point like this. And then once they get to this ripening point, they change over within a day or two, and then they get soft and they're edible. But they stay crispy hard like an apple all the way up to that point. And the good thing about that is that the insects generally can't infiltrate the structure of the tomato to get in there, like tomato worms and stuff like that. They can't get in there unless, of course, it gets cracks, but they generally can't get in there, and the tomato stays healthy all the way up to the point of harvest. So in general, when you grow this tomato variety, you will get some really good healthy tomatoes off of this. And as long as if it doesn't, you're not getting 14 inches of rain, you're not going to end up with all these splits on the tomatoes. The one thing I will say about this tomato that I noticed is that it cracked very, very easily. Well, not very, I shouldn't say that because we did get a lot of rain. But when it did get cracks, it was like literally an earthquake just opened up. I mean, the crack on these things just, it was just a huge fissure inside of this tomato. But I definitely like this tomato. I don't know what it tastes like, but I like the way it looks. It's very different in color. It's a striped tomato. It's kind of like my striped vintage wine, but this thing is totally different. This has got a contrast of like pink and orange striping, which is very different from the striped wine tomato, the vintage wine tomatoes that I grow. So the striping on this is very different. We'll go over the details on that at the table, but I just want to show you the plant. This is generally a potato leaf variety. Okay, it's a potato leaf variety. This would be considered a beefsteak tomato. I believe it's a Lycopersicum. I will double check that information at the table. I'm breaking off some of the dead leaves. And what else can I say about it? I don't know too much of its history right now, but when we get to the table, I will look up on Google first, what I can find about it, maybe who the creator is, and we'll go over the details once we get to the table. All right, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like on there. It's a pretty good producer. This plant would have produced a lot more if the weather didn't go completely haywire this year. It would have produced a real heavy amount of tomatoes on it. This probably would have been one of my best beefsteak producing tomatoes this year because this plant just constantly puts out flowers, and those flowers constantly become tomatoes and they constantly grow. But as you can see here, a lot of the damage, why you don't see a lot of tomatoes, is because of the tomato flower blight that it's getting, or late blight that's getting on the flowers, and it's killing all the flowers. So because of that reason, I'm not really going to see any more tomatoes on here. Once that blight kicked in and it starts killing your flowers, well, that's pretty much the end of your tomato season. There's no point in going on any further because the blight's just going to keep killing your flowers. So unfortunately, that's where I'm at. But I still have enough tomatoes on here this year to at least review a few of the tomatoes. And that's it, really. Just let you look and see what it looks like from the back side. Looks like from the top. The plant's roughly about 3 feet tall. I might let these ripen up on here, and then I think I'm going to cut this plant down and then let the new shoots come up. So we'll see. I don't know how I feel about it, but the blight just keeps growing upwards and just getting worse and worse. It's like there's no point. There's no more flowers on there. The top of the plant looks pretty good right now, but there's no more flowers. I need to wipe out the blight, and that's the problem right now. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so I'll see you back at the table. All right, so we're up to the taste test portion of the chocolate stripes tomato, and I'll give you a good look at the inside of it. Why, right there. Okay, that's what it looks like on the inside. Here's a good look at the bottom of this thing, and you can see the color pattern on this. It's quite amazing looking. Here's the big one. Now, all this scarring occurred on its own. I really honestly have no idea where the scarring came from. I mean, nothing was hitting the tomato or anything, so this tomato did get a lot of scarring on it, and I'm really a little baffled by that, but it scarred up on its own very easily for absolutely no reason at all. So that is something I noticed with this tomato, but you can see the pattern on this. I want to try to give you a good view of that pattern. Look at that gorgeous looking pattern. Very interesting striping effect on here. I've never quite seen a striped tomato quite like this one. This one's definitely unique in its own way. But we'll do a Brix test on it. And let's see what the Brix says. Okay, so the Brix is reading 5, so it's telling me it's not going to be that sweet of a tomato. It's kind of on the low side, so I already automatically know what to expect. But what do I know about this tomato? It's a Solanum lycopersicum. It's a beefsteak tomato, obviously. It's a striped beefsteak tomato, and I don't really know too much about the origins of the tomato. I don't know who created it or where it came from. I can't really find any data on that. And it's an indeterminate tomato, and that's basically it. There's really not much information about it. So let's give this one a bite and see what it tastes like. This is about the best tomato I got. Now, all the rest of them got these really bad cracks in them. You can see this tomato cracked very, very easily. And when it did crack, it literally, you can see the size of these cracks in here. I mean, it almost split in half. Most tomatoes, when they get too much water and they crack, they normally just, I don't know, they get like a crack in it and it heals over pretty quickly. This thing literally split in half almost. I mean, the fissure on this thing is so deep. I mean, I could put my finger in that crack is how deep these tomatoes crack. Here's the big one. I'm really upset because these tomatoes look so beautiful, and then we got 14 days of rain, almost 13 inches of rain in total in that time, and that's the result of it. Had we not got that much rain, would it still have cracked? It might have cracked a little bit, but this was really bad. The other interesting thing about this tomato I noticed is that it's scarred very easily. Like you can see all these scars on here. It looks like calf facing. That's not calf facing, that's scarring. And I don't know what the scarring, what caused it. It just appeared that way one day on its own. So I really don't know. The tomatoes were beautiful. There was nothing wrong with them. And it just, one day, it just started getting these little marks and scars on it. Could have maybe been insects trying to bite it up and they couldn't get through the tomato easily and it just damaged. I don't know. I honestly don't know what caused it. But that's about all I know about it, so let's give this a bite. Just as the Brix meter indicated, it was going to be very low in sweetness, and this tomato is very low in sweetness. Now, is it always going to be very low in sweetness? Probably not. Maybe if I add a little bit more lime to the soil and make the soil a little bit more alkali, I can bring that sweetness up. That usually brings your sweetness up on your tomatoes. That might be one of the reasons why it's not so sweet right now. The rain literally washed all the nutrients out of the soil. So that might be causing some of the foul taste. Not foul, but inaccurate tasting of it. But this year, as of right now, with this tomato, it didn't really develop a sweetness very well. In fact, the sweetness I'm going to say is about a 20. And the tangy is probably up around 35, almost 40, to be honest with you. It's about 35 though, which means that's the offset in flavor. There's almost no sweetness and it's very tangy. I'll take another bite. It's almost all tang, no sweetness at all. The only sweetness is really down low. The inside of it, the very center part of it, seems to be a little bit on the chalky side. The skins are really tough. They chew up pretty easily, to be honest with you. They're not really thick skins, but the skin is a little bit on the thick side, but it's not like plastic cellophane. It chews up pretty easily. If you just chew it, it'll break up. Some tomatoes, the skins are very thin. They're like cellophane. They stick to the roof of your mouth and you can't get them out. You got to stick your finger in your mouth and scrape that skin off the roof of your mouth or cough it out or something. It's almost, those are really bad. This one's not nowhere near as bad as that, but the skins are thick and a little bit tough. I'll take one more bite and we'll end the review. It's a tangy type of tomato. What would it be good for? I guess you could use it for hamburgers and sandwiches, but I wouldn't make a sauce out of it, at least not the way it's tasting this year. I mean, I could cut another one open. Now, I do have more tomatoes on that vine, so we'll try this little piece to this. Right there. We'll try that. Same thing, it's very tangy, no sweetness, flavor is off. I would definitely not grow this for anything other than in ornamental purposes, at least this year. I'm going to try this tomato again next year. We'll see if we can bring the flavor up. I'm going to really lime up the soil for this one. I got my pad where I'm making notes as to how I want to set the soil up for certain tomatoes. This is one of the ones that's definitely got to get noted that the flavor is just way out on it. Again, that could have had something to do with that 14 inches of rain or 13 inches of rain we got. We washed out all the nutrients out of the soil and just made the soil drop in pH. Which, when the soil drops in pH, you're going to get a really tangy flavor to your tomatoes, and the sweetness ain't going to develop. So it could be a combination of those things. So I'm not going to rule it out. We'll grow it again next year. We'll grow it in different environments. We'll spread it out. We'll see if we can get that flavor up in different parts of the yard, and if not, I wouldn't grow it for anything more than the ornamental purpose. I mean, it's a gorgeous looking tomato. Try to get you up on that skin. I mean, that's just gorgeous looking. I mean, that is beautiful. I've never seen striping quite like this. This tomato it's like a pastel kind of a color montage on this thing. It's a very, very beautiful looking. I definitely want to give this one another chance. I definitely want to give it a go next year. Now, I got more tomatoes on there. Maybe they'll develop a little bit better taste. Again, it could just be that heavy rain has really knocked the flavor out on it this year. More than likely, that has a lot to do with it. But I know a lot of my other tomatoes, they're tasting fine, so it's not the soil. Some tomatoes just didn't like that rain, and some tomatoes simply got through it. And this is one of the ones that didn't like the rain, but I still have to do a review on it anyway. So I have notes I can go back to next year when I go to grow it again. I can go back and look at this tomato and say, what did it do last year? And so I could see, prepare myself, if it does it again, then, it's too many constants, Have to grow it in a different state and different environment or something. I don't know. But that's it. That's your tomato review for the chocolate stripes tomato. This is considered, believe it or not, this is considered, from what I read online, the little bit I did read, it's considered the must-grow tomato. Like, a lot of people brag about it, so it's got to be some kind of an environmental conditions as of right now that caused this taste of this tomato to kind of go out. But the size of the fruits were fairly, these are fairly nice fruits. I mean, that's got to be close to a pound, if not more. I mean, it's got to be something like that. I mean, this has got to be close to a pound, this one tomato. So it's definitely worth a go. You're just going to have to dial in the soil and get the weather conditions right, so you really don't get affected by low sugar content in your tomatoes. So unfortunately, that's what happened with this tomato this year. So anyway, that was your tomato review for the chocolate stripes. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.